The Hammer Podcast will not be heard this month. In its place, we give you the following special presentation.
Hey everyone! Before we get into the Legends of the Superhero episode that we have for you today, I would like to get into some feedback that I got on the last Legends of the Superheroes episode. Now, if you remember, that was my talking with Sean Engel about the Green Lantern movie starring Ryan Reynolds. Well, my first email comes from the irredeemable Shag. He writes, "Hi, Gene and Sean. I really enjoy your Legends of the Superheroes episode discussing the Green Lantern film. As you mentioned, this is a very polarizing movie. Myself, I'm in the disgruntled category. I took notes during the show and wanted to share some alternative thoughts. This film's biggest crime was that it wasn't just a bad Green Lantern film. It was an unsatisfying film in general. There were some enjoyable scenes and fanboy nods, but as a whole, the story lets the viewer down. I don't know any muggles who saw this film and said it was great. You get a general meh from those folks. Casting Hal Jordan in the film was probably one of the problems. Jon Stewart was already in the public consciousness due to his popularity on Justice League Unlimited, and merchandising. I'm sure kids went to see this film and were wondering, who is this Hal Jordan guy? You could have done the film with John and simply explained that he was the replacement GL, instead of having to follow Hal's story. In regard to Ryan Reynolds, as you mentioned, he only felt like Hal in certain scenes. While the humor was fun, that felt more like bits written for Kyle Rayner, or specifically for Ryan Reynolds. I don't blame Reynolds, as he has a decent acting range. I put the fault on the script and the director. In regards to the romance, I actually think it had a place in the film. It humanizes Hal and addresses his womanizer character flaw. Giving Hal a human anchor to relate to makes all the crazy things with powers more impressive. I agree the costume was too busy. In general, the special effects were too busy throughout the entire film. The gigantic scenes with the Corps were sweeping and impressive, but due to the busy special effects, it was hard to take in and enjoy. Here is a comparison to explain my point. Compare these two film scenes. 1. Space battle at the end of Return of the Jedi, and 2. Space battle at the beginning of Revenge of the Sith. Both have lots of ships flying all over the place and exciting dogfight action. However, in Revenge of the Sith, there is so much on the screen it's very hard to follow, whereas Return of the Jedi controlled the amount on the screen and makes for a very enjoyable action scene. Same problem exists in the GL film. You are pleased with the narration at the beginning of the film. I hated it. The voice acting was fine, however the old adage of show me, don't tell me exists for a reason. So much exposition, right at the start of the film, with big cosmic concepts really set the tone to yuck. I completely agree that Hector Hammond was wasted. The actor did a great job with what he was given, but the film would have been better if he was the single big bad. The inclusion of Parallax was unnecessary and a misstep. In the comics, Parallax is one of two things. 1. A nickname for Crazy Hal, or 2. A convenient retcon plot device. Parallax is not a character, nor should it be the focus of a movie. Such a letdown. And yes, I suppose it was nice to see the FF2 cloud getting more work. Let me get this straight. Parallax slaughtered tons of Green Lanterns. Yet Hal beats Parallax with 15 minutes training, and then by doing what exactly? I think he just tried harder with his ring. Wow, why didn't those other GLs think of that? You're correct. This is where a training montage would have come in handy. Heck, maybe even have Sinestro teach Hal a Karate Kid-style crane move that he could use against Parallax at the end. No can do defense. While I also blame Jeff Johns for this awful movie, it's probably not fair to lay the blame solely on him. Warner Brothers is a huge multinational company with tons of people who probably provided input, or should have. Decision by committee either further messed up this film, or perhaps could have saved it. With hindsight, here are a few thoughts on how they could have improved the film. Less busy special effects. Spent less time with the Corps and more time telling an Earth-based Hal Jordan Green Lantern adventure story. Before we start tackling big cosmic issues, we need to learn to care about Hal as a character. Certainly, they should have introduced the Corps, but the first film should have been a Hal story. Save the big Corps-related stories for the sequel. Just my 2 cents. Perhaps it's about 50 cents worth, really. Thanks for the entertaining episode. I look forward to the next one. The Irredeemable Shag from the Fire and Water Podcast, the Who's Who Podcast, the Ultraverse Podcast Network, Who True Freaks, and he can be found at firestormfan.com. You know, I can't really argue with any of that. Again, the film is different things to different people. But I think one thing we can all agree on is that they shoved way too much stuff into this one movie. If they had picked something, whether it be the GL core focus, the Earth-based adventure focus, whatever, just pick a storyline and do that. This seemed like 3 movies just kind of smushed all into one. Thank you very much, Shag, for writing in. Our next email comes from Mr. Chris Franklin from the Supermates podcast and the Power Records podcast. He writes, "Hi, Gene. Just finished your look at the Green Lantern movie with Sean Engel. I come from the same place as you guys. It's not a bad movie. To me, it's a lot like the Wolfman remake from a year or so earlier. All the ingredients were there to make a truly fantastic film, but it just didn't quite come together. Personally, I think the movie is far too earthbound. Focusing on Hector Hammond was a huge mistake. That was another incident of John's influence, since he went out of his way in the early issues of his GL run to make Hammond a true threat. That deleted scene with young Hal, Hector, and Carol at the very least makes their relationship make more sense. In the theatrical cut, I feel like their relationship is too much out of left field to care about, and leaves the viewer wondering why we're spending time with this awkward guy. The scenes on Oa were great, but far too fleeting. Had Warner Brothers embraced the more cosmic nature of the GL mythos, they may have had a Guardians of the Galaxy level movie 3 years earlier. Nice call on Galactus' parallax. I do admit they went to that well too quickly. I know Reynolds gets a lot of flack, but as you two said, I think he did well with what he was given. Mark Strong stole the show for me. Had they spent time really developing his and Hal's complex relationship, that scene at the end would have really sung. I still want to see the movie with Sinestro going rogue, but it ain't gonna happen. Great episode, Chris." Yeah, see, that's the thing. Shag wanted a more Earth-based adventure. Chris wanted a more galactic, cosmic adventure. Neither of them are wrong. It's just there was so much haphazard in this movie that the movie couldn't make up its mind what it wanted to do. In my opinion, personally, I would have liked to see Hal get the ring and him do a more Earth-based, like the original Green Lantern adventures. Before he found out he was a space cop, he did stuff on Earth, and that would have given you a little more of a basis of him as a character, rather than, bang, go right to this cosmic level entity, and like Shag said, he beat him with 15 minutes of training, so whatever. Our last email this time out, and this is very fortuitous because this is a gentleman who will be joining me on the show later on, is from Aaron Moss of the Head Speaks family of podcast. He writes, "Hey Gene, great episode. Overall, I liked the movie myself. Not great, but better than what coworkers were telling me. A few notes on this episode. I agree that the costume wasn't bad, it was just too busy. I liked the light-constructed look of it, but it relied way too much on John's, I think. I didn't care much for Ryan Reynolds as Hal Jordan. Like I think Sean said, that when he was being GL, he wasn't bad, but as Hal Jordan, I thought he was too Ryan Reynolds for me. I thoroughly enjoyed Hector Hammond, and I agree that he was wasted in the movie. I didn't care for Parallax. Of course, to be honest, I never cared for the creature Parallax, as I feel he was created just to absolve Hal over the whole destruction of the core thing. I did like Sinestro in this movie. And like Eugene, I think you said it, I think that him becoming a Yellow Lantern was too forced. This is Gene. Actually, I think Sean said that, but whatever, I'll take the credit. Fine by me. I think they should have had him a little more disgruntled and a little more forceful, for lack of a better word. As for this movie not being great, I blame the writing and using Ryan Reynolds as Hal Jordan. Also, and finally, I don't care for the CWing of Amanda Waller. Until next time, make mine the Hammer Strikes podcast. Aaron Brotherhead Moss. Well, thank you very much, sir. Yeah, that's something, if you go and listen to Head Speaks, and I would highly recommend both that and his Task Force X podcast, but on Head Speaks, Aaron has gone into great detail about the CWing of Amanda Waller, and it is well worth your time to listen because, yeah, I agree with him wholeheartedly on this. Now, as we are talking about feedback, believe it or not, people, I actually have 2 iTunes reviews to go over. The first one is from Geekarino. Now, the gentleman that goes under that handle, he let me know who he was on Facebook, but is so far buried in the Two True Freaks thread that I couldn't find it, so I apologize. But he gave me a 5-star review, says, very eclectic podcast, every episode a gem. Only wish that came out more often. Well, thank you very much for the 5 stars, and it ain't coming out more often. I can't handle that. I have a life, believe it or not, so I can only do it so often. The next review comes from Professor Allen, he of the Relatively Geeky Network. And he also gave me a 5-star review, and he says, if you want a variety of geeky subjects covered in one podcast feed, you have come to the right place. Comics, TV, fantasy, sci-fi. It is all here for your listening pleasure. And thank you very much, Professor Allen and Geekarino. I really appreciate the iTunes reviews, and if you would like to leave me an iTunes review, I would greatly appreciate that as well. But for right now, we will take a quick break, and we will come back with Legends of the Superheroes. I have called you all here today at the behest of Don DiManzo to discuss the expansion of our Jersey territory. Our Don has seen an opportunity to move into Atlantic City at an event called AC Boardwalk Con, which will be happening May 14th through the 17th, 2015. Don DiManzo has asked that some of our made men attend this convention and convince the locals to try Two True Freaks. Joining me, Gene Hendricks, on this trip will be my Quantum Cast cohort, Jeff Fishman. Chris Tyler, the hair metal hero, will be representing the Boston arm of the family, while Scott McGregor will be representing the New York branch. Our capo, Chris Honeywell, will also be there to provide some added persuasion. Your Don has asked that any of his loyal friends in the area come and pay their respects to this new endeavor. He reminds you that all the information on the event can be found at doacbc.com. That's doacbc.com. Come help us make Atlantic City an offer they can't refuse.
Feels good.
Hello, sweetie.
My name is Aaron Moss, aka Head. I love Star Wars, comic books, movies, reading, comedy, and most things geeky. Come join me monthly, well, mostly monthly, as I talk about the things I like and a few of the things I hate. Where, you may ask? Why, I'm at Head Speaks. I can be found on iTunes under Head Speaks, and at my website at headspeaks.com, and then click on Headcasts. Also, you can find me on Facebook and Google+, both under Head Speaks. Come, take a listen. This podcast is not endorsed or affiliated by Kid and Play. Though, that would be cool, huh? I'll go ahead and let Kid and Play finish the promo out.
Oh, hello. We didn't see you there. Welcome to Comic Book Fight Club. My name is Jeff S. Fishman, Esquire.
And I am Gene Theodore Hendricks.
Here at Comic Book Fight Club, we sit fireside, sipping our brandy, and discussing who would win in a bout of fisticuffs. with other members of the comic book Illuminati.
Yes, you caught us at a good time, as Kevin Smith, Stan Lee, and the late Bob Kane just went on a beer and nacho run.
Have you ever wondered who would be victorious in a bout? Galactus or Unicron? How about the Incredible Hulk versus the Monster Doomsday? What about G.I. Joe versus the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Or the equally important bout of the Snorks versus the Smurfs? And of course, the Titanic duel between Archie and Jimmy Olsen.
And you can expect the intelligent and erudite debates to sound something like this.
But I always thought Transformers fans were intelligent and literate, so they should see that Galactus has to be the winner.
Like, he's hungry. Oh, I'm so hungry. I'm going to get weaker, and Reed Richards is going to be able to beat me.
I don't know anything about Rob other than he was defeated by Parker Brothers.
Oh, back to one of Sean's points, saying he got out of the Sarlacc. You know, every time he's gotten out of that in any story, he has to get put back in it because he's a bitch.
Oh my God! Oh my God! No! I tap out.
You are a sick man.
I'm not familiar with the last one. I might have to hit Google image search here.
So won't you join us for some witty discourse, a fine snuff, and a tincture of sherry, as we debate over these all-important matters, here, only on Comic Book Fight Club.
You can find the show at twotruefreaks.com and on iTunes by searching for Comic Book Fight Club. Please also join us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/comicbookfightclub.
Legends of the Superheroes. For centuries, the world has been protected by a group of extraordinary men and women who have dedicated themselves to fighting crime.
Greetings, and welcome to Legends of the Superheroes, a production of thehammerstrikes.com. I'm your host, Gene Hendricks, and we will be talking about, yet again, the live-action version of one of your favorite comic book characters. Now, as you all know, I never do this alone, so with me I have a very special guest this time, the man behind Head Speaks and Task Force X, Brother Head himself, Mr. Aaron Moss. How are you, sir?
Doing good, Gene. Doing good. Finally glad to actually talk with you. Well, not in person, talking instead of just chatting back and forth through messages.
Yeah, we keep sending each other instant messages or emails about each other's shows, and now we actually get to have a conversation for once.
That's always a good thing.
All right, and we're going to be doing something a little more off the beaten path than the traditional superhero kind of thing. We're going to be talking about 1994's movie The Crow, starring the late Brandon Lee. Now, this is a movie that I do not have any reference as far as the source material for. I've seen the movie. This was the first time in about 20 years that I've seen the movie, but I've seen the movie. I have never read any of the comics. Have you read any of the comics?
I want to say I read the original comic. A buddy of mine had it, and we met Mr. O'Barr back at the Comic-Con back in, what was it, 98, 99?
Oh, okay.
And my friend had the actual comic, and he got it signed by Mr. O'Barr, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, very nice.
So, so he, he's big on a lot of the, the Crow and stuff like that, so he let me read his, and I got Myths in Sin City, and some more of the off-beaten stuff.
Okay. Yeah, it's a I don't want to bring the movie to its most simplest form, but it's basically a revenge movie. It's the hero was wronged. In this case, he and his fiancée were actually killed, and his spirit, body, whatever, comes back to take revenge on the people that killed them. So, fairly straightforward stuff, and it's the son of Bruce Lee, so you got to expect there's a lot of action involved here, and it's all done very well, in my opinion.
Oh, yes, I agree 100% on that one.
Yeah, it's funny because my wife watched it with me, and she said at one point he's on it, he drops to his back, kicks a guy out a window, then jumps back up. And she said, wow, that's a pretty cool move. I said, he's Bruce Lee's son. What do you expect?
Yeah, you have to wonder how much expectations was put on him because of who his father is.
Right. And as everyone knows, this was unfortunately his last movie because of a freak accident with a prop gun. And I won't get into that, but it's obvious that if he had continued on, I think he probably wouldn't have surpassed his dad, but he would probably at least equaled him in action movies.
Very well have.
Yeah, so it's a shame, but such is life.
Yeah.
Now, for anyone not familiar with this, the basic premise behind it, beyond the revenge flick, is that, and the reason for the title, is that crows are said to take the spirits of the dead to the afterlife. And once in a very great while, when that spirit cannot rest, the crow will bring that spirit back to finish whatever needs to be finished. And that's what happens here to the character of Eric Draven, who played by Brandon Lee. And he comes back a year after he has been killed, and he has an interesting array of superpowers. Now, he doesn't have flight or super speed or any of that. He has like a Wolverine healing factor, and he can see, like in Beastmaster, he can see through the eyes of the crow. So he knows what's going on around him. And he has some type of touch telepathy, where he can touch somebody and read their memories. And I wasn't entirely sure if it was only memories that pertained to him or anything, but it's a way for the movie to get in and do flashbacks, which I think was done pretty well, the way they handled that. When he first comes back, you get the whole flashback of his fiancée getting raped and murdered and him getting murdered. And that may have gone on a little too long, but the rest of them throughout the movie, like he touches Ernie Hudson's character, yes, the guy from Ghostbusters, who plays a police sergeant, and he then sees what went on in the hospital with his girlfriend in the operating room, basically, and how she was fighting for life and everything. So it's an interesting storytelling way to get that backstory in there without really taking too much away from the action. But those were the only superpowers I saw in there, beyond the obvious Bruce Lee martial arts.
You were talking about how he get his memories. You can tell he absorbs memory from other, because to spoil to the very end, we do see that he has, as you mentioned, all of Shelley's memories when she was dying in the hospital, which links to another power he has, kind of like Ghost Rider.
That's exactly what I thought. It was like a penance stare.
Yeah. Yeah, he made the bad guy, feel everything. Even though I don't think Top Dollar was actually involved with her death, directly there, he still held him accountable and all that, and he was able to make Top Dollar feel everything. So
yeah, he made him feel Shelley's 30 hours of pain while fighting for her life in a second.
Yes, I thought that was really, and again, I thought that very much Ghost Rider.
Oh yeah,
with his pen and stare.
Yeah, it's interesting. This film, it kind of reminded me between the supernatural aspects of a Ghost Rider story, not so much the Nicolas Cage film, but a Ghost Rider story, and RoboCop, because he's coming back, he's kind of remembering his old life, and then he's taking revenge using his new powers on the guys that killed him.
Yeah, I didn't think of that until you mentioned it, but you're right. That is very, very cross between the two.
Yeah, it's an interesting movie. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend it. It's not necessarily for everyone, but I enjoyed it. It's not, like we were talking before the show, it's not one of those movies you got to pull out every year and watch, but it's a good one to see. I had a good time, but then I don't know what it is. It seems like every movie I review on this, I find something positive to say about, whether other people think it's good or not. So maybe take my advice with a grain of salt.
Well, like I always say, taste is subjective. So I mean, just because me and you may like, the next guy may not like it. So that's just part of life.
Now, there were a couple things in here I wasn't all that fond of, and the main thing was the lighting. Now, I realize that the majority of the movie takes place at night, but I would still like to see what the hell's going on. And it could just be the version I watched, which was on Netflix, but it was very, very dark. And
it was very dark, and I've got it on both DVD and Blu-ray. I had it on DVD, and then one day forgot I had, and I saw it on sale for the Blu-ray, so I picked it up also. So I watched the Blu-ray version yesterday. My wife's over there giving me the thumbs up, agreeing with you that she thought it was very dark also.
Yeah.
Darker than it could have needed to be.
Yeah, if they had just, put a few more lights in there. Now, I know the mood they were trying to go for, but there's mood and then there's confusing your audience. And
right.
I think they went a little too far towards the confusion end of things. It wasn't, I understand where they're going for, and it doesn't hurt the movie so much because you still get the story, you still get what's going on. But on the other side of that, if you notice, the only places that are actually well lit are the police station and
right.
I can't remember his name. Ernie Hudson's character, his apartment.
Yeah, I can't remember his name either. In my notes, I always refer to Ernie Hudson.
Yeah.
That's who
Winston.
Yeah, him too. But I see the darkness didn't bother me. Like I said, I don't like darkness and all the superheroes and what have you. This one here, it didn't really bother me. I thought it helped set the mood. And seeing how the original comic was in black and white, I don't know if it was the darkness was kind of helped to remind you of that, or but it kind of seemed to help throw back to the comic a little bit.
Huh. I'm wondering if the movie might have been helped if it was filmed in black and white.
Kind of like Sin City.
Yeah, it might have actually helped the mood more that way rather than just taking a color movie and making it dark. Huh. Didn't think about that.
Well, I see. Yeah, it's strays from the original comic, of course, but because if I remember right, they were killed by a carjacking.
Okay.
Instead of someone breaking into their apartment, but the same characters were involved, if I remember right. Again, it's been many years since I've actually read the comic. I brought it from a friend of mine, but if I remember right, yeah, they were killed in a carjacking, but the same basic essence was there. Eric and his fiancée was killed, and the Crow brought him back to avenge their deaths, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Now, in the comic, you probably don't remember, but did it continually follow Eric, or were there multiple characters that were brought back? Was it like a House of Mysteries thing?
Well, I believe the original story was Eric Draven, but then they had a couple different stories, and they had a short. And I haven't read any of those. I know they had a short mini-series or something, so they may have followed different characters. I'm not entirely sure on that. All I read was the original Crow series, which what the movie was more or less based on.
Right, and this movie is entirely Eric's story from beginning to end. And
yes.
The way it leaves it is he's in a good place. And then you would think that any sequels would have been a different character, because there's no reason for him to come back again.
Right, because he's completed what he needed to do. He's avenged his and his fiance's death, so he's happy, if you will.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting though. The way my mind works is I'm basically stuck in the 80s, and that goes you look at my comic preferences, my music preferences, and all that. I'm stuck in the 80s, so I'm watching this, and your wife's gonna kill me now, but I actually have a note. There's no good music in this movie. Just because, for me, I'm listening and I'm like, garbage, 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 noise, garbage. But then again, my two favorite bands are Queen and Huey Lewis and the News, so there you go.
Like I'm also stuck in the 80s. Most of my preferences come from the 80s. I like old school rap from the late 70s, early 80s. So I'm kind of with you. But like I said, the music it wasn't my music.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mind it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, my wife's over there saying that it was the instrumental she liked, the score of it.
Okay, well, that I'll agree with her with.
Yeah, not so much the music, but yeah, the score.
Score good, soundtrack, nah.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, now we're all in agreement.
Okay. So, like I said, this movie came out in '94, but looking at the production design, it seems like it's probably based earlier than that, because if you look at the cars or the TVs or any of that kind of thing, it kind of looks like late 80s, maybe, very, like, maybe 1990. It doesn't look much past that. So,
Right, well, so it came out in 94, but I'm not sure when it was actually produced, because they probably may have held on to it a little bit because of...
No, it was filmed in 93.
Oh, okay.
Actually. But looking at, the source of all knowledge, Wikipedia,
Right.
the original comic came out in 89. So if they're if they're using the comic's art as a basis, that would explain the film's production design, because you want to make it look like that. So that would make it like a late 80s looking movie.
Yeah, the one person had, the grungy shirt and the shaved head was very, my wife was telling me, very Nirvana, very grunge movement.
Yeah.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, was late 80s, early 90s, if I'm not mistaken.
I have
no
no idea.
Yeah, I wasn't into that. I vaguely remember the grunge movement, but yeah, it wasn't, again, not my cup of tea.
Right. It's funny, though, because when he finally gets his makeup on and is wearing the black costume and everything, the first time he shows up, I just wrote a note to myself, I am Gothman. Because that's what he looks like.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I kind of thought he was kind of reminiscent of the Joker a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. But
the look, attitude.
But it's, unfortunately, he's always linked to the wrestler Sting for me, because after this movie became very popular, that wrestler changed his makeup look to match this. So,
oh, did he? See, I wasn't into wrestling at that time, but I do remember seeing, now that you mention it, seeing Sting look like that. I didn't realize that this is where he got the idea from.
I don't know if this is exactly where he got the idea from, but he went from having all this colorful makeup like the Ultimate Warrior to going to a white face with black around the eyes and elongated black mouth and everything. So it just, whether he took inspiration from this specifically or not, this always reminds me of it.
Oh, definitely.
It's just weird, watching this movie now after seeing that, it actually works with the action moves and everything. I can see him being a wrestler.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you on that.
Oh, there is one superpower I forgot to mention. At one point, there's the character of, I believe her name is Darla, who is the mother of a little girl named Sarah. Right. And she's a drug addict. And he finds her with one of the guys he's going to kill, and he actually pulls the morphine completely out of her system and gets her clean.
Okay, see, I missed that. I knew he was doing something, but I couldn't quite tell. Besides giving her a little pep talk, and you got a little girl at home you need to take care of. Yeah, which I really liked that interaction there.
Yeah, it's a blink and you miss it kind of thing, but he's actually rubbing her arm where she shot up, and you can see white liquid come out of the holes.
And see, not knowing about drugs, I wasn't sure if that was just she'd just done that was just some remnant that was leaking out, or if, what was going on there. So that does make sense.
Yeah, I'm not sure where that all fits into this. Maybe it's something from the comics and we don't know. But it was interesting because he had the connection with Sarah, the little girl, because Shelley and Eric took care of her while her mother was off being drugged up.
Right.
So he's trying to get her back into a good situation by helping her mother out. And you see that later on, that her mother is starting to make her breakfast, and she's home and happy and everything. And so it leaves her, basically everyone that's good, except for maybe Ernie Hudson, because you don't see what happens to him. It leaves everyone in a better place than at the beginning of the movie.
Yes, most definitely. And I mean, you could assume that maybe Ernie went on to better things, but that's the one character that you don't really know what happens to him afterwards.
Right. And he's one of the guys that he's a good cop, but he's not exactly into the whole chain of command.
Right, yeah.
So
the rogue good cop, if you will.
Yeah, basically it's like the opposite of Dirty Harry.
Yeah.
Because you have the one detective that's shown, and he's a complete prick.
Yes, very much so.
And Ernie Hudson, you find out, used to be a detective, but because he stuck his nose in where it didn't belong, they busted him back down to patrolman. He's still a sergeant, so he's still decent as far as the pay goes, but he's not a detective anymore. And
right, he doesn't have the gravatas or whatever of being a detective now. He's been pushed back.
And he can't run his own investigations. He has to answer to this schmuck.
Right. And that's one thing I really loved, Ernie Hudson showing up as the cop, and I also loved his interaction with his superior officer, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
The detective. I thought that, because again, the detective, again, I can't remember his name, thought he knew everything, was trying to take control of the situation. Ernie's like, how's that working out for you? And like you were saying, Ernie just, he didn't care about the chain of command. He was doing the right thing.
Right. Yeah, like...
no matter what it cost him.
Like you find out that he was at the crime scene at the beginning of the movie where Eric and Shelley were killed, and he followed Shelley to the hospital, and he was with her the entire 30 hours until she finally gave up the ghost, to use a Turner phrase. But he tries to play it off as, like, oh yeah, I was trying to get information. But he was there because he felt bad. And that...
Oh yeah, no, he was a good cop. I mean, you can tell, or a good detective or whatever he was. You can tell that he was, he's got a heart of gold, if you will.
Yeah, and he's also a smart cop. And unlike a lot of these stories, he figures out who the vigilante is pretty damn quick.
Yes.
And that's not the normal thing. Normally it's the vigilante. Yes, I worked on that crime scene, but I don't remember anything about the case. Therefore, I can't put one and two together.
See, one thing I'm not quite sure of was, did he not tell the detective who was behind it because he was trying to protect Eric? Or was it because he was afraid that the detective wouldn't believe him that, it's a dead guy from a year ago?
I think it was a little bit of both, really. He knew Eric had to do something, so he was going to help him as much as he could, but he also knew that this detective was just looking for another reason to get him off the force, and saying, yeah, I'm teamed up with this dead guy who's going around looking like the mime from hell, to use Ernie Hudson's line.
After that, he probably wouldn't be a sergeant after that.
Right, yeah, he like the other cop said, he would be on school bus duty.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but I find it interesting that he did wrap it up at the end, because the detective's looking for this vigilante who's picking off, the scum of the earth, basically.
Right.
But at the end, Top Dollar's up on the top of the church, impaled on a gargoyle, and Ernie Hudson says, oh yeah, your vigilante's up there.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed that.
So now the detective's not going to look into it any further, the big crime boss is taken out, and everyone's happy.
It's all wrapped up with a pretty bow.
Yes. Oh, and Top Dollar, the big crime boss, is being played by, and let me get the actor's actual name up, Michael Wincott, who most people will remember as Sir Guy of Gisborne, the sheriff's cousin from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Yeah, I know he looks familiar. I'm sitting there, I know he looks familiar, but I just couldn't place him.
Yeah, he also played Rochefort in the Disney Three Musketeers in 1993.
I don't remember that one offhand.
That's the one with Charlie Sheen and Kiefer Sutherland and Oliver Platt, and Chris O'Donnell as D'Artagnan.
Yeah, okay, yes. I know what you're talking about now.
Yeah.
Yes.
So he was the ex-musketeer in that. So he's been playing a lot of medieval kind of villains in these few years, because Robin Hood was 91, Three Musketeers was 93, and then here he's like the guy from Three Musketeers if he was immortal from Highlander. Because it's basically the same kind of character, and he's got a hidden vault of swords.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that's one thing I thought when him and Eric was battling on the roof, and he brings out the sword. I thought it was a very Highlander.
Yeah, there can be only one.
I was waiting for him to say that. Yeah, he pulled the sword. I'm like, in fact, I wrote in my notes that I liked when Top Dollar went Highlander on Eric.
Yeah, there you go. And I noticed how Eric kept marking everything, all the times that he actually killed somebody. He marked it with an outline of a crow.
Right.
And at the one point where he kills T-Bird, he does it, but it's in lighter fluid, so it's a big flaming crow. And my note says, well, now we know where the flaming DD came from in Daredevil.
Well, it's funny. As my 21-year-old son was sitting here watching part of it with me, and when that scene came on, he looked at me, he's like, "Hey, Daredevil." So yeah, I don't know if they took it from this or if this came from somewhere else, but yes, you can very much see, because I mean, this wasn't a small movie. Everyone heard of it, especially with Brandon's passing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm sure that they got some inspiration for that Daredevil scene from this. But yeah, and you mentioned Sarah, the little girl, earlier.
Yes.
Normally, I don't care for little kids when they show up in movies like this, but I liked her in that. I thought she worked out very good in it.
Yeah, she was not the wide-eyed innocent, because she was living on the street. She had a drug addict for a mother, so she was kind of streetwise, but she had a nice sense of humor about her. Yeah. Especially because Ernie Hudson's character, Sergeant Albrecht, just looked it up on Wikipedia. He takes a liking to her, tries to watch out for her, so he buys her a hot dog, and they have a nice little back and forth there. So it's pretty good, and that comes back later on in the movie because she helps him after he's been shot, and it works out really nicely.
Yeah, like I say, usually when they put a character in the movie, it's to appeal to the younger audience, and it feels forced usually. But yeah, like we were both saying, yeah, she worked out very good. Yeah, she came back to the end and kind of brought it full circle.
Yeah, it's a nice through line with that, I think, because it's another thing it's something for Eric to do that isn't killing guys. It's to take care of Sarah or to talk to Ernie Hudson. I'm going to keep calling him Ernie Hudson. I don't care if I know his character's name.
Yeah, I looked at his character name a couple times while I was watching. I still refer to him as Ernie. That's all right. Well, my wife was saying, it kind of give Eric a human element to the story also.
Yeah. And you can tell, even though he's this tortured soul, come back for revenge, he's still a smart aleck.
Oh, yeah, very much so.
Because in the apartment, Ernie said, "Oh, are you going to disappear into the thin air?" You guys, "No, I was going to use your front door."
No, I very much enjoyed Eric's personality, his witty sarcasm, if you will. I really like that. Another thing, when before Eric killed Tintin, when he was jumping around the roof, well, I was like, "Hey, it's parkour before his parkour."
Yeah, really.
Like, I'm not sure what exactly. I tried to look at Wikipedia, but I couldn't find a definite answer when it became ready with a quick search. But yes, it was very parkour of Brandon. I'm sure he did all that himself.
Oh, yeah.
With his father being who his father is.
Well, from what I read, basically the entire movie was done except for like 3 scenes when he was killed.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
So it's, only a couple of things that he was not actually involved in. And for those of you out there that are thinking, like I'm pretty sure a lot of people did, "Oh, I'm going to watch the movie, see if I can find the scene where he gets killed," it ain't in there. They were filming when he was killed, when he was shot with this gun. But that was only developed to be used in the investigation, and then it was destroyed. So it is actually not part of this movie.
Okay, yeah, see, because I'd read on, I think it was Wikipedia, that it said that, I think it was the scene where they shoot Eric at the beginning was the scene where he died.
Yes.
So I wasn't sure if and I'm sure they wouldn't actually use that footage.
Yeah, they had to reshoot that with a double.
Okay, is that what happened? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was one of the last scenes to be shot. So
Right.
that scene, the scene where he's actually falling out of the window when he's being killed, and the scene
Right.
where he goes back to the apartment after coming up out of the grave, were all done with a double, but they digitally composited Brandon Lee's face on them.
Okay.
So, like, when he's putting the makeup on, it's another guy actually physically putting the makeup on, but you see Brandon Lee's face in the smashed mirror.
Right.
So they worked around it, but everything else is Brandon Lee in the movie.
Yeah, that's what I've heard before. I remember, like I said, I was working at Target when this came out, and I remember me and some of the guys talking about about Brandon Lee dying during this, and I remember reading at the time that, yeah, he was mostly done with the filming, and there was only like 2 or 3 scenes left, and they either used stunt doubles or, as you were saying, computer graphics to simulate Brandon.
Yeah.
Get too mixed up.
And they also, what I find interesting in this movie is the way he kills everybody. And this just occurred to me right now. It's very much like the Spectre from DC Comics. And anyone not familiar with the Spectre is he always does something kind of ironic with the way he kills people. So, like, in this, the guy that is super into his car is blown up in his car. The guy that's into drugs is OD'd with several drugs. The guy that's really into knives, and this is the fun one, is stabbed with his own knives in every major organ in alphabetical order.
Oh, see, I didn't catch that part. I saw him being stabbed, but I didn't realize it was in alphabetical order.
Yeah, the one coroner comes in later on, and he says, yeah, look at this guy, he's a voodoo doll. He was stabbed in every major organ in alphabetical order.
Okay, yeah, I missed that part of the line then.
So, yeah,
that is very nice.
We got some karma coming on here, and it's not actually limited to Eric's character, because there's this weird woman who is Top Dollar's half-sister / lover.
Yeah.
Which,
yeah,
oh
very
boy.
strange.
Yeah, it's a strange movie. But she realizes that the crow that follows Eric around is actually the source of his power. So she manages, after the crow gets winged, for lack of a better term, with a bullet, she grabs it and she's going to take that power for herself.
Right.
Well, earlier in the movie, she was carving out people's eyes with a dagger. So the crow turns around and pecks her eyes out. Hello, karma.
Well, again, you were saying, separate from Eric. At that point, I mean, Eric and the crow were, well, not the same. They are linked. So, I mean,
yeah, it's very Beastmaster.
Yeah.
He can feel the crow's pain. The crow feels his pain. But once the crow's injured, he loses all his supernatural abilities. So he's just a guy again.
Well, like when the crow got shot, I like that part there where Top Dollar's like, "Caw, bang bang, I'm dead." I really love that.
Yeah. Well, he did a great job. Michael Wincott did a wonderful job as the villain in this movie. I think he was given free rein to go over the top, and he took every availability to do that.
Yes, and sometimes when they go over the top, it can come off cheesy and bad. But in this case, I thought he was over the top, but in a very comic booky and a good way.
Yeah. He was. I think he might have been channeling Jack Nicholson's Joker.
Very, very much possibly. Once again, more Joker reference.
Yes.
And then, like all superhero movies from the time, the bad guy had to fall off a building and fall to his death.
Yes, and this is
actually not even superhero movies, just action movies at the time.
Yeah, basically, it was a lot of sudden stops at the end kind of deaths.
Yeah, yeah, it seemed like every action movie from the late 80s, 90s, the main bad guy had to fall off of something.
Yeah,
that had to be their downfall, if you will.
And in this case, he fell off the top of a church, which was actually using gargoyles for their original purpose, which was as drain spouts.
There you go.
And what's funny is he manages to land on one, impaling himself, and then his blood runs into the gutter, and it comes out the gargoyle's mouth. Very, very nice shot on there.
Very nice. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I didn't realize that was the original intent for original use for gargoyles. Original intent for gargoyles was for drainage, but yes, it worked out very well. Another thing, I was watching, I noticed when Gideon, the pawnbroker,
yes,
when Eric poured gasoline and left and shot the shotgun full of rings and what have you into the building, and it blew up. I don't know if it would have blown up quite so spectacularly, but it was awesome.
Oh yeah,
it was cool as hell.
My note was, what was in that shop? He had a stash of C4 in the basement or something.
Maybe, and I wouldn't put it past him. Yeah, that's one thing I thought when it's exploding. I'm like, you just poured a little bit of gasoline around the counter and shot it with a shotgun full of rings. I don't know if it would explode that way, but I'm really liking the way it looks, so I guess I don't care.
Yeah, it's special effects. I mean,
yes,
it's fun. That's all that matters.
Yeah, pretty much. Another note I've got here is that we were talking about, Eric's sarcasm and his wittiness, whatever. Like when the cops show up after the battle at Top Dollars, and they tell Eric if he moves, they're going to shoot. And he kind of skips to the side.
Yeah, like dances off.
Yes, I like that. I thought that was very, witty and very sarcastic, if you will. And I was just telling my wife earlier, one of my favorite lines from the movie is Ernie Hudson when he's like, "There's so many cops, you think they're giving away free donuts."
Yeah, that was one of the things I had issue with at the very beginning of the movie, because the way the movie is set up is it starts on Devil's Night, or where I'm from, it's called Mischief Night, which is the day before Halloween, and the city's burning. There's arson everywhere, and that's all Top Dollar's plan. Is that's what he's done every year for however many years, is they've set fires and explosions and stuff. So you have this one murder, which attempted murder at the time, because Shelley's still breathing. And you've got like 50 cops. Where's the rest of them? Shouldn't they be out, maybe, I don't know, saving people from fires, explosions,
This is true.
But, that's just me. It just you have the cops here tripping over each other in the apartment when
one murder.
Yeah, the city's in chaos, guys.
Yeah, you don't need quite so many cops for one murder. Well, when you've got all this other mayhem going on. But then again, maybe I'm not sure how long that's been going on as a tradition, so maybe they're just used to it at this point. So, city will burn on the night before, we'll fix it the next day, who cares?
Yeah. Top Dollar did mention that they've gotten so used to it that they now have Devil's Night greeting cards.
Right, yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, you're correct.
So it's been going on for a good number of years, I would think.
So I think that's part of what is just the cops. At that point, you're like, it's going to happen. We can't stop. We've tried. Why bother about the city burning down? We'll just fix it up, clean it up tomorrow.
Yeah.
And my wife's like, well, maybe they throw up a bat symbol. It wouldn't be so bad.
Well, in this case, it will be a crow symbol.
Yeah, there you go.
That's it. Ernie Hudson becomes the commissioner of police. That's how it ends.
There you go. Since they didn't tell us, that sounds good to me.
There, he's in a good place. We're good. We're fine.
I know they did a couple of sequels to the movie. They did a TV show. I don't know if any of these characters came back. I watched part of the second one, and I just wasn't into it. And then a buddy of mine said he saw the third one, and he thought it was horrible, and the series was just as bad.
Okay, you see, this is all I've ever seen of it. I haven't seen any of the sequels, the TV show, whatever. I've just seen this one movie, and that was it.
So, I couldn't tell you anything about the rest. I just know that there was a couple of sequels. There was a TV series. And like I said, I watched part of the second, but it just wasn't... I just couldn't get into it at the time. I don't remember if there was too much going on or what. And then a buddy of mine said he'd watched them, and they were all not worthy of the crow, if you will.
Okay.
So take what you will out of that.
Well, it's the same kind of thing where you have the one movie which is fairly decent, it's very well loved, and people try and cash in on it, and it's not all that great.
Yeah.
It happens way too often, especially with comic book properties.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I have to agree with you on that one. Well, usually most of the time the sequels aren't as good. There are a few exceptions. Like I thought X2 was better than the first X-Men.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
but
yeah.
Then they had X-Men 3.
Well, you have a tendency of stuff like Spider-Man 2, I thought was better than the first Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire.
And then they had Spider-Man 3.
Yeah.
You see where I'm going with
Yes.
this?
Yes. Although I am one of the guys that does like Batman Forever. Not so much Batman and Robin. So.
Okay, I'm going to have to hang up now. No, I liked it when it first came out, and then rewatchings, I'm like, what the hell is this?
Well, I can do without Tommy Lee Jones and his painted-on teeth on the side of his face, but...
Yeah, I thought Tommy Lee Jones, when they announced him as Two-Face, I'm like, oh, he's perfect. He looks like Harvey Dent to me.
Yeah.
But part of my problem with that movie is it seems like they were both trying to top Jack Nicholson's Joker.
Yeah, well, I can see the Riddler because Jim Carrey is Jim Carrey. You can't really do too much with him. But I can see him going back to like the Frank Gorshin Riddler, who was kind of goofy. Yeah, but Tommy Lee Jones, he was not playing Two-Face, he was playing Cesar Romero.
Yes, very much so. I think that movie could have been a whole lot better, if they would have toned Riddler down a little bit. But then again, as you said, it's Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey's going to be Jim Carrey.
Yeah, that's why they hired him.
And
They hired him to be
Yeah.
Jim Carrey, and that was it.
But if they would have toned down Two-Face, so he's more of a Two-Face character instead of, the maniacal
Yeah, if
cackling, as you said, Cesar Romero.
yeah, if he had been the serious one,
Yes.
then I could have bought it a little better. But yeah, it has its flaws. I still enjoy it. But this is not a Batman Forever podcast. We may
No, I
have
was
to
gonna
do
say,
that another time.
Yeah, we're starting to wander off a little bit, but yeah, I agree.
You've listened to my shows. You know that topics
Yes.
tend to wander on here.
Yes, no, I know that. I was waiting when this was going to wander away from the Crow, and here we are.
Yes. 40 minutes in, there you go.
But yes, I agree 100% there.
Well, one of the things I did like is because when I didn't remember too much about the movie itself, and I don't know how closely I watched it originally,
Right.
but the iconic look is him all in black with a painted, essentially mime face.
Right.
And I didn't remember how he got that. The fact that it was from a mask that his fiancée had sitting on the mirror in their apartment made sense. It's like, okay, I got to cover myself up somehow. That's great. I'll use that. And then he puts the makeup on, which luckily this is super waterproof makeup because it's raining the entire movie and not one little bit ran on that makeup.
Right, yeah, no, that was... Yeah, I don't know where you got the makeup from, but yeah, it was very, very waterproof.
Yeah, it's latex makeup or something.
Yeah, that's one thing you're saying, you remember watching, but you don't remember a lot of the details. I always seem to remember this being a shorter movie for some reason. But when I'm watching, it's like an hour and 40... I want to say it's like an hour and 47 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't remember it being that long. And it's not a bad thing. It's just, I remember most of the scenes condensed, and I just seem to remember it being a shorter movie, but...
Yeah, that happened to me because, and we're completely off topic here, but I had the same kind of thing with Snow White, the cartoon Snow White.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I saw it when I was little. It was actually a drive-in. We saw it.
Oh.
And I remembered it being like 15 minutes.
Well, see, the question at this point is how many listeners actually remember drive-ins? I've actually got one relatively nearby, a couple of towns away. There's a drive-in that's still open.
Yeah, there's one around here. It's like an hour and a half south of me. But
Yeah.
it's not worth it. It's just like I don't go to live sporting events or anything. I have an HD TV at home. Why do I need to leave the house?
Yeah. Yeah, so I went to a Chicago Bears game up in when they were in Oakland once. Other than that, yeah, most of my sporting events, if I do watch, it's on TV.
Yeah, because there's no line for the bathroom.
This is true.
You can pause. You can go,
Yeah.
come back, and you haven't missed anything.
Oh, I love my DVR.
Oh, yeah.
In fact,
I don't...
again, straying further off topic,
Yes.
we DVR most of our shows and watch them. So when I have to watch something live and I have to watch the commercial,
Oh, yeah.
live TV, I hate this.
Oh, it's funny. Even when we watch a TV show on Hulu, I'll reach for the remote to try and fast forward the commercial. I'm like, oh, wait. I can't hear.
Yeah.
Even...
Yeah, and that's a little spoiled.
Yeah, even when I know it's on Hulu, and I know I did this 10 minutes ago for the last commercial, I still reach for the remote. Stop it.
Yeah, definitely. I think DVR's got us a little spoiled on that.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like our kids are not going to know a time growing up where they can't just pause their show and go to the bathroom, or, oh, I want to watch this show now.
Yes. Yeah, my daughter just, as I told you, we talked, I got a 6-year-old daughter. She'll be 7 here in another month. She, I want to watch this show. Well, it's not on right now. We don't have it on DVR, so you can't. You have to wait till it comes on. Oh. When something's not on.
Yeah, it's like you had to wait all week to watch Saturday morning cartoons, and if you missed it, like the way it was in my house, it was me and my sister, and we alternated. This is my half hour, this is your half hour. So if you wanted to watch something that was on her half hour, tough luck. You're never gonna see it.
Yeah, when I was younger, I had a younger brother, and we didn't quite have that problem. I mean, we watched, because again, we're both boys,
right?
But we watched most of the same things, so that wasn't too big of a problem for us.
But still, if you don't see it that week, You hope it comes around like in the summer reruns, but that's it. You don't have another chance.
Whereas, now if you miss a show, you can find it online somewhere.
Oh, yeah, we missed... It was... I think the first 2 episodes of Agent Carter. For some reason, it did not record on our DVR.
Oh, I hate that.
The next day, it's on Hulu. It's like, we watch it here. Didn't miss a thing.
My wife just said, that's first world problems right there.
And I'm a happy first world citizen. Thank you very much.
Amen. If I miss a show or it gets deleted or whatever, I'm like, it's not a big deal. I'll find it online somewhere and watch it.
Yeah.
But like I say, me and my wife got my daughter. My daughter is DVRing Jim and the Holograms, the G.I. Joe cartoon. She's a big fan of the old Batman 60s cartoon or a TV show.
Oh yeah. Well, do you have MeTV out there?
No, I don't think we have that one.
Okay, because it's a broadcast station. We have
I've heard of it.
Yeah, so every Saturday night they run The Adventures of Superman with George Reeves, Batman with Adam West, Wonder Woman with Linda Carter, Star Trek, Lost in Space, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and Sven Gulli, a guy out of Chicago, does an old horror movie every Saturday night.
You haven't heard this Bengali one, and then who cares about Star Trek?
I'm sorry, I'm getting some interference here.
Sorry, I just had to throw that one out there.
Yeah, but they call it Superhero Saturday Night, and it's great.
Right on.
Yeah, but I mean, we've been watching the George Reeves show, and it just so happens that when we started recording it had started at episode 1, season 1. So we're watching George Reeves in order through, and then we're watching Adam West and Wonder Woman, and she loves it. It's great.
Oh yeah, I've got the Wonder Woman on DVD. My daughter loves that. Like I say, every once in a while, the Batman series will be on the Independent Film Network or some other channel, and so I'll record them on the DVR for her because she really loves the old 60s. I can't get her really to sit down and watch any of the other Batman shows. Yeah, but she loves the 60s Batman.
Well, I mean, it was targeted at kids, even though the adults get some humor out of it. But you want to hear more about that? You listen to my other Legends of the Superhero show on Batman. Oh yeah, we're way off topic.
Yeah, I think we strayed a little bit again. But back to the Crow.
Yes.
You remember that movie with the Crow? Before we finish up, I did like the scene at the very end when Eric and Shelley are reunited.
Yes, that was a very touching scene.
Graveyard and Shelley's spirit or whatever you will comes over and they kiss and reunited, and then we see the graves fully covered again.
Yeah, that was a nice touch. It puts them together for eternity, and it's the way it's supposed to be. Yes.
And then the ending of the crow in the ring in his mouth, the engagement ring?
Yes.
And he drops it in the what was her name? The little girl
Sarah.
I keep wanting to call her Shelley, but that was the fiancée.
Right.
And he drops it in her hand. I thought that was in her little monologue there at the end. I thought that was a very nice ending to the whole thing.
Yeah, she had a voiceover at the beginning and at the end, and I thought that was a nice way to bookend it. Because it allowed... You knew she wasn't going to be killed or anything in the movie, so you were able to have what happens to all these other characters, and then she's doing the voiceover, the intro voiceover, because you need that. In order to understand the movie, you need that at the beginning, and that was a really nice wrap-up at the end that she did. So I enjoyed that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought that was a very, very nice touch to it. Like you said, it wrapped everything up. It kind of bookended it. It was a nice conclusion to Eric's story, if you will.
I don't know about you, but I ran out of notes.
Yeah, that was my last notes on that also was...
Okay, well...
About the ending. So I thought, overall, I really enjoyed the movie. Like we talked about earlier, it's not one that I have to sit down and rewatch every so often just to watch it, but if it's on or if I think about watching it, it is a good movie. I enjoy watching it again, so... Yeah,
I would say anyone listening to this show, if you haven't seen it, check it out. If you've seen it and you don't like it, maybe give it another watch with fresh eyes. I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm just telling you it's a decent movie.
I'll do that. I'll try to change their mind. Oh. If you don't like this movie, you're wrong. Oh.
All right, well, why don't we wrap it up there, and why don't you tell the lovely people where they can find you on the internet?
Well, I'm at my home at headspeaks.com. That's HEADSPEAKS.com. That's my website. And from there, I have links to my both my podcasts, as you mentioned earlier. There's Head Speaks, where I talk about things that annoy me, geeky stuff, comic books, anything that catches my interest at the time. And then I have my Task Force X podcast, which I cover John Ossinger's Suicide Squad from the 80s, and also the sister comic Checkmate in all of their appearances. They're also both available on Stitcher and on iTunes, or you can listen to them from my website, and they're both mostly monthly.
They're whenever you can get them out.
Yeah, I try to do it monthly, but yeah, with family and a newborn and work and all this other stuff, it's mostly monthly.
And I have to say, I would highly recommend checking both of those shows out. I never knew a lot about Task Force X, as I said in the one email I wrote you, but listening to your shows, obviously you started with Legends. I love Legends.
Yeah, well, the first episode I covered the original Task Force X back in the what was it, the 50s or 60s with it was more of a war story.
Right.
And I covered the first 3 issues. It was in the Brave and the Bold, 25 to 26 and 27, right before Justice League showed up. And I just couldn't get into those. So on suggestions from Shag Matthews, I went ahead and jumped ahead and started the Legends miniseries, which introduced the new Suicide Squad, written by John Ostrander.
Yeah, and I'm enjoying listening to that because you do a character profile, you give us a nice synopsis of the books. It's really well done. Anyone who doesn't know a lot about Suicide Squad or Checkmate, check this show out. It is really worth your time.
And hopefully in a few months here, I'll be getting up to where Checkmate chronologically came into being, and I'll probably be covering an issue of Suicide Squad and then an issue of Checkmate.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, I remember Checkmate from can't remember exactly what time period it was, but when Amanda Waller was the White Queen, and they...
Oh, okay, you're probably thinking the Ruckas.
Yeah.
Checkmate from the mid to late 90s, or 90s, late 2000s.
Yes, yeah, I remember collecting those and reading those, and I really enjoyed it. So going back and finding out more about where it originally came from, I'm gonna be waiting to hear that.
Well, good. Yeah, I like that Checkmate, but I don't think it was as good as Paul Kuppenberg's Checkmate from the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't quite so... If I remember right, the one you're referring to had a lot more superhero elements to it.
Yeah, because it was the rule of 2, where they had, for each super-powered version, they had to have a non-powered version. Like if Amanda Waller was the White Queen, the Black Queen had to be super-powered. And that was What's-Her-Face from the Batman books.
Sasha, wasn't it?
Yeah, Sasha Bordeaux.
Bordeaux, there you go. But, yeah, in the original Checkmate... Suicide Squad handled the superhuman element of it, and Checkmate handled the more mundane and human aspects of espionage. So they didn't quite have as many superpowered individuals as the series did. They were mostly just normal operatives in there.
Right.
So, and then also Harvey Bullock moved from Batman over to Checkmate for a while.
That must have been weird.
Before moving back to Batman, so... that was very... But anyway, we'll be on at some point in the future.
Yes.
But that's where I can be found.
All right, yeah, so definitely head on over to headspeaks.com and check out both those shows. It will be well worth your time, as I said. And thank you very much for coming on. I had a blast. This was fun.
Thank you for having me. I always enjoy talking about comics to somebody, and I get into trouble because I'll be talking to somebody, and I'll be going on and on. I'm like, I gotta get some work done.
Well, in my office, people come to me. It's like, hey, have you seen the new Avengers trailer?
Yeah, I have that part. Aaron, have you seen this? Have you seen the new Avengers? Have you seen this? When does Avengers come out? When's the new Superman Batman movie coming out? Yeah, I usually tend to be the go-to person.
Yeah.
In my building for comic related. If someone's got questions, they come and ask me about it. Look, I'm trying to work, but now having said that, let's talk for a little.
Well, since you bring it up.
Exactly. So, Hey, well, thank you again for having me, Gene.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been fun, and we will definitely get together again for something.
Definitely. I'll have to have you on my show.
Yeah, that'd be a good time.
Talk about, so.
All right, so we'll see you next time, everyone.
Legends of the Superheroes is a production of thehammerstrikes.com and focuses on examining live-action versions of superheroes. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please send an email to legends@thehammerstrikes.com. Please look for The Hammer Strikes on Facebook and Google+, part of the Two True Freaks Internet Radio Network.